Hi, friends. Hello in the world. Welcome back to this episode of talking about different tools that you can use for your transitioning, for your life. And specifically, I wanted to bring on my client, Amanda, to talk about this topic of toxic positivity as to how we define it, when positivity becomes toxic, and what can we do about it basically. So that's why, Amanda, welcome to my episode, and I'm so thankful that you are here, and introduce yourself and we dive into the topic.
Okay, all right. Well, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. As also mentioned, my name is Amanda Onochie. I am the CEO and principal consultant of AB Community Development Solutions. I'm a company that focuses on the implementation of asset-based community development in nonprofits and direct service agencies.
Amazing. So Amanda and I have been talking about this topic of toxic positivity, especially at work environment for some time. So we decided that it's time that we shared our observations and how this is affecting our work culture with all of you. So Amanda, let's start with a definition of how do you define for yourself toxic positivity?
Okay. So there's a number of definitions that are floating around, especially since positivity or toxicity in general has become pretty mainstream in the past couple of years.
Mm.
So for me, toxic positivity is a dismissing of the actual reality at hand.
Mm.
So as we go on, I'll expand on that. But basically, it is just a
Yeah.
refusal to acknowledge the current reality.
Yes, I love that definition. And I was also thinking for me, the definition would be trying to be positive out of
Mm.
fear maybe of hurting someone, out of fear of not being able to say the things you want to say, right? And therefore trying to like go around the bush and never really getting to the point
Yeah.
because we're just like so afraid somehow to be having honest, candid conversations, giving honest feedback to people, right? So therefore, this is for me like the element of toxic positivity is when you are doing or being positive because you are afraid of the alternative. So if we were
Mm.
to go into like details of examples of how that's happening and how it's actually harmful, maybe you can, yeah, elaborate on that.
Yeah, sure. So, as I mentioned, what I've observed within the social sphere, I do work
Mm,
in community development. So, just kind of
yeah,
keeping my toe in the water and understanding where we as a society are going.
yeah,
Um, you've heard in recent years that person is toxic.
yeah,
My boyfriend, my girlfriend is a narcissist. They're toxic. That workplace is toxic. So when we naturally think of toxicity, we think of negative. That person is bad. That person, that situation is unhealthy. But in all, truth, we can also have a toxic positive
yeah,
experience. And for me, that is the analogy that comes to mind is when we, let's say you as an individual, you choose to remain positive no matter what. Okay, that's
mm,
great to some extent. But in situations where you need to acknowledge and you need to discern and you need to process, if
yeah,
you refuse to process because you refuse to acknowledge, you're
yeah,
putting that experience on the shelf for another day. And
yeah,
so you continue to put experiences on the shelf, on the shelf, on the shelf. Eventually, that shelf is going to give way and it's going to spill all over you. And now
yeah,
you're forced to deal with everything at once.
yeah,
And we've seen that. We've seen people who we normally would say that that's our encourager on the team, but then they eventually have a breakdown, because
yeah,
everything is now all over them and they are forced to acknowledge and
yeah.
process and discern at that moment all at the same time.
Yes, exactly. And I think the examples that come to me when you think about that or when you talk about this is examples of when let's say we're having meeting in the team and then we want to actually talk about the problems that we're encountering, right? And instead
Mm.
of talking about problems, we try to keep like as if the positive spirit and then say that, oh no, don't worry about this. This is actually not a problem.
Uh-huh.
We hope it will be solved on its own. Like important thing is that we just get along and then we just keep like status quo of facade of everything like great,
Mm-hmm.
but inside we're all feeling like I just want to scream and be angry or actually talk about things that, like you were saying, right? The dismissing the reality. We keep dismissing the reality for the sake of everyone feeling good because
Mm-hmm.
of this assumption that people can't handle truths or they can't handle honest conversations, right? And therefore, we're just like trying to babysit basically everyone's feelings.
Yes, and I love how you said that because it is like at the core, you may see that I'm sparing everyone's feelings. I
Yeah.
am just so attentive to the needs of others, and I know that that person's having a hard time in their personal life. Therefore, I'm going to reel back
Yeah.
feedback that I may have for them, some harsh feedback that I
Yeah.
may have. But in that situation, what are you saying? You're saying that
Yeah.
that person is not capable of
Yes.
receiving. That person is not capable of hearing and acting as an adult. And
Yeah.
we know that's not true.
Yeah. Exactly. It's like as if we're trying to take over the responsibility and believing that if that person hears what we're going to say, they're going to fall apart or something, right? But of course, that's a huge undermining. And also
Mhm,
at work, we may need certain level of like how we can improve the things that are not working. And there will always be things that are not working, not because we are like bad humans or we didn't try hard. It's just when a lot of
mhm,
people come together in the team, it's bound to be certain things not working. And we need to be looking at it and saying, okay, this is not working. And here are the reasons
mhm,
and how we can solve it in the way that is not coming out of like passive aggressive or resentful place,
mhm.
right? Because oftentimes when we become so positive the whole time, then like resentment keep like boiling
Yep.
inside, and then it keeps
Mhm,
like getting away or getting out of us and affecting our conversations instead of like, okay, this is we need to solve something, and how are we going to do that? And we need
mhm,
everyone's brain for that, and then
mhm.
positive can come later.
Yeah, it's disingenuous to an extent.
Yeah.
If we were to say in our company culture, we're very positive. We only focus on the positive, and as a team, everyone is expected to fall in line to that prescribed definition of
Yes.
best worker being somebody who's
Yes.
always smiling, and like you said, you start to become resentful.
Yeah.
You start to become insincere, disingenuous,
Yeah.
and now you're just playing a role
Yes.
getting through the day. But in
Yeah.
reality, we need those contrarians. We need the different voices, the different perspectives. We need the different demeanors to really move forward and push forward with our whatever your agenda is in your workplace,
Yeah.
um, to completely remove those multiple sides of the coin. It just feels like we're doing ourselves a disservice.
Yes, exactly. We're basically creating a work culture that we don't want to go to. And then we keep forcing ourselves to go there every day because we feel like we have to. And then the whole like performative energy of like we're performing things, right? And we're just being like
Mhm,
trying to be someone else in that environment because being ourselves does not really fit in there because we know that we need to be like positive. And if we're by nature not so much the positive sometimes, and we're like, yeah, I need to just like behave in a different way, come home and feel like, oh, now I can be myself. And then it's
mhm,
tiring over time, especially if we work in that environment for a long period. And
mhm,
therefore, we feel like are we really a troublemaker or are we really trying to do something or we're just trying to like hide and make everything okay and then say the beautiful things even though we're not really believing that's actually true, and then we feel out of integrity, and then a lot of troubles happen. So I
mhm.
think we depicted like the problems in extent. So what would you say, Amanda? Like, the most effective ways to encounter it, basically, right? Or to counter it in the way that is not maybe disruptive, because for many toxic
Mhm.
positive people, I think any suggestion of changing might be like, oh, I don't know, is this a good
Yeah.
idea? So what would you
Hmm.
say the most effective ways?
Yeah. In all of the partnerships that I've worked in and a
Mm,
number of the workspaces that I've been in, yeah, it does seem if you were to present anything but the extreme positive side of
yeah,
things, it is seen as a threat. It is seen as
yes,
aggressive nature. But for
yeah,
me, I feel as a realist, there's duality with everything. You know,
yeah,
duality in our person. We have a left hand, we have a right
yeah,
hand. We have a left side of our brain, right side of our brain. We have two legs. So there's
yeah,
duality. Something can be, good and still need work.
yeah,
There are areas of ourselves and of our workspaces, of our jobs, of everything that they can be inherently good, but still need work to become better. And so, as a leader, acknowledging both sides.
yeah,
So if you were to come to me with let's say you missed a deadline, and you come to me and say, "Hey, I missed a deadline." I've seen supervisors, managers be like, "Oh no, it's okay, it's fine," blah blah blah. And then as that individual walks away, the manager is immediately frustrated because they
yeah,
were really depending on that presentation, that deadline to be met. And I'm standing there like, okay, what just happened here? You had an opportunity to share with that employee, okay, like, we were expecting this to be done at this date. It was not okay. Here are the ramifications. How can we work together to correct it?
yeah,
But instead, you're like, no, it's fine. Don't worry about it. You go have fun. It's okay. And now you have
yeah,
this supervisor or manager staying up late to do the work themselves
yeah,
and correct it. So again, as a leader, if you're not delegating, if you're not sharing, if you are not honest, and that is truly what it is, if you're withholding the full truth from somebody, you're infringing on their autonomy. So now that
yes,
that employee is walking away with a false reality of what's going on. And behind the scenes, there's a fire that just ignited because of, this one or two steps that were not met. So yeah,
yes,
that's what I feel like.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And the other thing I was thinking about is that I think as much as we want to like create a amicable atmosphere, positive atmosphere, whatever it is, I think as long as there is no trust in ourselves that we can handle having truthful conversations, and as long as there's no trust in others that they can handle these truthful conversations, right? Then we will be always tiptoeing around, and we will be always trying to like protect others' feelings or our feelings. And it becomes like so much of the minefield of emotions that we're afraid to step on it, right? So that's why I would say that one of the things that helps me a lot is to say, okay, why am I so afraid of like hurting their feelings, or why am I not trusting basically myself to be able to communicate things in the clear, concise manner so that they understand, like if we're talking about deadlines, for instance, right? They understand what's happening. I understand what's happening. Now we're going to work together to make things happen instead of focusing on um, how I may have heard, or how keep undermining their abilities, keep undermining our abilities of we can actually handle it well. We don't even need to go to any conflict. Like the opposite of um, toxic positivity, maybe for some people, it's like conflict, and many people are so afraid of conflict or
Mhm.
confrontations, right? So therefore, we don't even need to go that far because we're already so extreme in this line, right? So
Uh-huh.
there is the middle ground we can go to that is not involving confrontation or conflict, but rather having the honest, truthful conversation. Yes, I would say for me, like trust in yourself and the other person that you can handle it, you can have this conversation would be key. What would you say, Amanda? Any other key elements that we need to pay attention to?
So I just want to pick at the confrontation piece because I've heard
Yeah,
so many leaders in my line of work. I've heard so many leaders be like, "Well, I don't
yeah,
want to, I don't want to, I don't want to," and it's like
yeah.
confrontation is not bad. Like
I
confrontation is does
know.
not always have to be that extreme yelling. I'm angry, but both people storm out of the room.
Yeah,
Confrontation can simply be like, "Hey, this is this is what happened," or "This is
yeah,
how I felt after the meeting when you had mentioned blah, blah, blah." Again, it's just an acknowledgement.
yeah,
And I think it definitely relies heavily on your delivery, but we
yeah,
can have honest conversations with each other
yeah,
and agree to disagree, in an
yeah,
amicable way, as opposed to being like, I don't want to be confrontational, so I won't say anything. I'll
yeah,
swallow my words and I'll
yeah,
let them fester until, it
yes,
explodes and I spew it out everywhere.
yeah,
So we as a society, I don't know where that actually came from. I think it maybe has just been ingrained in us since childhood,
yeah,
to always be nice, always be
yeah,
pleasant, especially for women in our
yeah,
society. So it's just
exactly.
very interesting. And so many leaders, men and women, I found that there is this extreme fear of confrontation or what they
Yeah,
perceive to be confrontation.
yes, exactly. And I think also like a lot of the maybe trainings that we go through, there is this, I don't know, encouragement maybe that, oh, even if you're giving the feedback, it needs to be like this way. It needs to be basically sugar coated in some variations of it. And I think we have, and also maybe we have expanded and we work in like global teams, right? So therefore, like cultural aspects are different. There are many
True.
elements to the conversation, and therefore in the absence of like being able to know all of their differences, then we maybe constrain ourselves to say, okay, as long as I'm very positive it's gonna
Mm-hmm.
work. I think this is
Mm-hmm.
like assumption for many of us, right? And therefore because of that assumption we try to then say, okay, but being positive all the time does not really fit with all the problems that we're solving, and
Mm-hmm.
how can we reconcile one another. And I think we get like so much into our heads and we're not really then in the end up getting what we want, and then we keep being frustrated about it.
Mm-hmm.
We keep trying to solve things but then we don't really get to it because all of what we're trying to solve needs to have that honest conversation. So
Yeah.
I hear when people say that, especially leaders say that, yeah, there are so many like factors to factor in. Yes, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, what happens if we allowed people to be themselves, right? Because we're really, I think, getting to that like what is actually our authentic self at workplace, right? We're exploring that more. What if we were not really in this performative or like taking up a role kind of a mode, then who are we at work? Who do we want to be at work? And giving space to explore them, maybe that's another way to go. And as leaders, we can also lead with our example to say, okay, this is my way of leading people. This is my way of conversing with people where I say the things the way I see, and then we can have a conversation about it.
Mhm. Yes, no, definitely. I think communicating with your team, like, hey, this is my communication style, this is my
Yeah,
leadership style, and then displaying that and being consistent in that, so that
yeah,
they understand not to take offense. Because we can train people in how to receive us.
mm,
Now it's
yeah,
it's not our job to do so,
yeah,
but if it makes your life easier to communicate that, then being consistent and showing people who you are
yeah,
and being respectful with that, I feel there's really, I mean, I've met some pretty abrasive people, but
yeah,
they were unapologetic in
yeah,
it, and they spoke directly like, hey, this is just who I am, you
yeah,
know don't take it personally. And
yeah,
so you don't. And
yeah.
I remember there's been several people that I'm just like, they're very abrasive, but I respect them for showing up
Mm,
as themselves and
yes,
trusting others to receive them, maybe
yes,
not exactly in the way that they want to be received, but still they're trusting people to
yes,
receive them. And so I think that
Yes.
is what we all struggle with. One thing I tell
Yes.
my younger siblings, I'm like, you can say whatever you want to people as long as you smile. At least that works here in America, because I don't want them to continue into the workforce feeling like they have to sit on their hands, they have to, make themselves small and, not cause any waves. And it's like, it's okay, like it's okay to speak your mind as long as you're respectful and you can speak in a way to bring everyone onto that ride with you, then you all can
Yeah.
be surfing.
Yes. I love that surfing analogy. And also, I was thinking that, like, as a surfer, I imagine that we know that we can serve in our own level, in our own waves, and there are other people they serve in their like surf in their own waves. And also we know that if we are able to receive other people the way they are,
Mhm.
that means that we are creating that space for other people to be who they are. And that also means that we're trusting ourselves to be in that space the way we are,
Mhm.
right? So I think giving that space to others. Yes, this person is this way. And even if not positive, but we know what they're saying, we know how they're contributing the same way, right? We can be by nature not positive or positive, whatever it is, but we know
Mhm.
that how we're contributing is important and we want to hear that um, truthful version of that contribution. And we want to contribute with our uniqueness. We want to contribute with our experience, with our cultural background, with our diversity, with all the different ways. But if
Mhm.
we reduce it to only positivity, then we are basically reducing and removing all the other unique aspects that we could have otherwise had, right?
Yeah, for years I've been a cheerleader for the contrarians on the teams. Right,
Mm,
we need all those different voices, all those different perspectives, and past teams that I would lead, I would ask them, okay, here's the plan. Do you see
yeah.
any holes? Do you see any holes in
Yes.
it? Like, what can we make better? What do you think about this? What do you think about that? And
Yeah.
so, with that, not only are you, sharing the workload, but you're
Yeah.
including your team in this decision. They have space or they have agency within the success of the project, but
Yes.
also you are giving a place for those comments. So
Yeah.
rather than them come out in other spaces where you are not anticipating them or
Yeah.
you may take offense to them, you're saying, "Hey,
Yes.
does anybody see any holes?"
Yeah.
And I've found that to just be very successful and very helpful. And again, just
Yes.
bringing everyone together because those people are needed. Those
Yes.
perspectives are needed.
Exactly. And I love that so much. And like I was thinking that when we are positive in the toxic way is I'm realizing that we're also getting away a bit on the objectives that we're pursuing. We're making it
Mhm,
so much about like me and you and like very personal in some ways. And therefore, we're getting
mhm,
away from how actually we want to serve the people that we want to serve, right? How we want to serve communities and how we want to achieve certain things with them. And therefore, in order to do that, we may need to like leave those fears behind and trust that we can work as a team, come together as a team, and look at our own holes as a team, and then critically answering some questions of whether it's going to work or not and how,
mhm.
and then working on this together. Amazing. I think, Amanda, we have spoken a lot about what it is and examples and what we can do to make things different, to create the culture, work culture, in the way that we actually like being there and working there, right? Any last minute comments before we wrap up?
No. There was something that I found to be very interesting. There was a Pixar movie, Inside
Mm,
Out. Have you heard of it?
yes,
Okay,
absolutely.
so yeah, I love that movie because I feel like maybe society we are now starting to allow
Yeah,
our children to understand that there is a whole gamut of emotions
yeah,
that you can have And I
Yeah.
feel like some of our adults may need to revisit that understanding.
Yeah.
So for those of you who haven't watched the movie, it's basically about this little girl named Riley who is growing up, and so she's crossing this threshold from being a child to a tween.
Yeah.
And she also moves to a different state or a different city with her parents, and so all of the things that she's going through internally, you see this battle between
Yeah.
her default mode, which is happiness, and
Yeah.
now the other emotions that are coming that naturally come of age. So the entire movie is happiness, the emotion, trying to
Yeah.
prevent sadness, trying to prevent anger, jealousy, disgust,
Yeah.
trying to prevent all these other emotions that she deems as negative. And
Yeah.
so throughout the entire journey, you find out in the end that what Riley, the young girl, needed the entire time was to mourn. She needed
Yeah.
to mourn her old life. She needed to
Exactly.
cry. She needed to release that so that she could get to happiness. And again, I feel like so many of our adults in the workplace, we've gotten to this space where we've almost forgotten, that it's
Mm.
okay to show emotions.
Yeah.
I've had to coach executive directors on that very thing. Like it's okay for you to have emotions. Now, how you display those emotions in the workplace, that's something different. But you continuing to safeguard and protect your team of adults, it is
Yeah.
doing them a disservice. Let them in,
Exactly.
share, be honest.
Yes, I love that. And I love that example of Inside Out. Yes, for anyone who hasn't watched, absolutely go watch it. And I think what I'm really getting at, like after experiencing so many different workplaces, is that I think the next level of our like leadership is shown in how we can handle so many different types of emotions from
Mhm,
ourselves, but also from others, and how we work through all of those and still pursue the common objective that we're pursuing, right? I think this
mhm,
is like the very challenging yet also rewarding simply because it's the honesty, the reality that we can't really like hide it away. We can't really put it on a shelf. We can't really
mhm.
suppress it, even though many of us are good at it, including myself. But learning to actually like know that as human beings, we have all of those emotions and they're not good ones or not good ones, but simply they
Mhm,
are there. They form our experience. And unless we're not accepting all of them as they are, they will
mhm,
come back and cause harm. And that's not what we want, right? So therefore, if we want to really have the workspace where people feel like they're being themselves, they're being heard, they're being able to contribute in the way that they really feel the need to do that, then
mhm,
I think the challenge is how we can embrace all of those emotions, deal with
mhm,
them, handle them at the same time, have honest
mhm,
conversations and work cultures. So it
mhm.
has been my pleasure, Amanda, to have you here and talk about this topic. I loved it so much. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh,
And thank you everyone
my
for listening.
pleasure.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Yeah, yeah. And yeah, if you have any questions or if you have any suggestions or your experience of how you're doing this, we would love to hear from you. So let us know. And I will tag Amanda in the post so you will get her profile as well. And if people want to talk to Amanda, how can they do that?
Sure. Email is best.
Hmm.
So I will have my LinkedIn and my Instagram.
Hmm.
I'll pass that along to also, but email is best for me.
Hmm. Amazing. So we'll indicate the email, and in case you let Amanda know, myself know of any questions or suggestions. So thank you so much. Have a beautiful week, and we'll talk to you very soon.